Well, thank you all for coming tonight. And thank you to Club Parkview. Thank you to Andrew. Thank you to the organisers, Jewel, Jim and Chris. Thank you to the candidates, because you are doing a very important job of holding governments accountable. It's really important democracy. I couldn't endorse Jewel's comments with any further. I want to thank you all for being awake. I want to thank you for making the effort for our country. We are together in an information war. We're at the front line of it, all of us in this room. I want to start with something that might surprise you. We're here because someone cared. It doesn't matter whether you're Raj born in India, me born in India, Chris born in Australia. Look at the big fella. He and I were once the same size, about this long, when we popped out of our mum's womb. And until about the age of 10, every human needs a lot of care. You know, a foal can be dropped out of a mare, and it's up and running and cantering in about half an hour. Humans need intensive care, and sometimes the care varies, but it's important to recognise that that care is there for years, and none of us would be here today if it wasn't for that care. Despite some monsters like Mao Zedong, Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler, Scott Morrison, Anastasia Palaszczuk. And they are monsters. They are monsters, what they've done. It's inhuman. But apart from them, the basic human trait is care. And I'll show you why that's so important and why I'm starting my speech that way. We need to appreciate that affordable hydrocarbon fuels have given us enormous benefits. Material benefits. Look around this room. Every single thing in this room has been touched by steel. The food, the clothes, everything. And what makes steel? Iron ore and coal. In the last 140 years, up until about 1990, energy prices have relentlessly fallen. And with falling energy prices, we have increases in productivity. With increases in productivity, you have increased wealth and prosperity. Everything in this room came from that. A king or queen 200 years ago lived a poorer, more dangerous, less comfortable, harder life with a shorter lifespan than someone on welfare in our country today. That's how much we've improved. We were scratching around in the dirt 200 years ago, and now look at us. We have got enormous moral, social and humanitarian benefits. My granddad was born and lived in Wales, and he died in Wales. He lived and was born in a valley in Wales. He had no choice for employment. He worked for the coal mine. That was it. Today, if you don't like your job, you can travel 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 kilometres away and get another job. That choice has come because of hydrocarbon fuels, coal, oil and natural gas. We've got enormous improvements in consciousness. Do you know that we used whale oil for lighting in 1850? Whale oil. The best friend of whales is coal. Look at it. There's not a single whale killed for these lights. We use forests for cooking and for heating. The area of forests in the developed continents has increased 30% in the last 100 years, thanks to coal and gas and uranium. Cheap energy is essential for manufacturing and for our own security. Cheap energy that is independent of the weather. We spent thousands of years, millennia, depending on the weather. And then in the last 140 years, we became independent of the weather. That is remarkable. Doesn't make us superior to nature, but we are independent. So let's have a look at the core climate claim. Carbon dioxide from humans using hydrocarbon fuels, coal, oil and natural gas, and from agriculture is changing climate, they claim, through claimed unprecedented, unusual and ongoing increases of atmospheric temperature, such that human production of carbon dioxide needs to be cut. That's the core claim. They want to cut back on our carbon dioxide levels. Carbon dioxide levels, they say, are increasing because of human activity. In 2009, the year after the global financial crisis, we had a major recession around the world, almost a depression, except in this country because we were exporting to China. But around the rest of the world, they cut dramatically the use of hydrocarbon fuels, coal, oil and natural gas, reduced dramatically the production of carbon dioxide. And what happened to the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere? Did it go down? No, Raj knows. It continued increasing. In 2020, we had a severe recession, almost a depression around the world, including this country, because of COVID mismanagement. It wasn't because of COVID. It was COVID mismanagement. Our use of hydrocarbon fuels decreased dramatically. Our production of carbon dioxide decreased dramatically. And what happened to the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere? It should have decreased, but it kept increasing. Didn't even inflect. Didn't go down, didn't even inflect. It's continued increasing. We cannot affect the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and I can talk about that in question and answer. I've held the CSIRO accountable on 3 occasions, had 2.5-hour, 3-hour presentations from them and cross-examined them. I'm the only politician anywhere on the planet that has done that. And I'm not bragging, I'm showing you that because no government has held their scientific agencies accountable. The CSIRO told me these things. They have never claimed that carbon dioxide from human activity is a danger and needs to be cut. Never. So I said, who has claimed that? Because the politicians tell us you did. Go and ask the politicians. CSIRO admitted, remember this climate change is based on the belief that there's unusual global warming going on. The CSIRO admitted that today's temperatures are not unprecedented. Not unprecedented. We have been fed crap. The rate of temperature increase, they say, is increasing. No, it's not. We've been basically flat or a tiny increase since 1995, 28 years. There has been no statistically significant change in any climate variable. Temperature, water vapor, snowfall, droughts, storm severity, frequency, duration. None at all, just natural variation that comes and goes in cycles. There has been no basis for policy. When you make a policy, you determine the effect of carbon dioxide from human activity on the temperature or on some climate factor. There has never been any quantified effect of carbon dioxide from human activity. Never. Never. John Howard admitted 6 years after he got booted from Parliament, in 2013, he admitted that on the topic of climate science, he is agnostic. He doesn't have it. And I'll come back to John Howard in a little bit. Because I think you'll enjoy what I've got to say. It's not complimentary. Alan Moran, I commissioned him to do, he's a very good economist, Dr. Alan Moran, commissioned him to do a report on the hidden cost of climate policies and renewables. We've seen a trebling of prices in electricity in recent decades. We have gone from the cheapest electricity in the world to amongst the highest. We still have the same basic coal. We send out coal thousands of kilometres overland, oversea, overland to China. They generate power. They generate power with our coal, and they charge 8 cents a kilowatt hour for it. We take our coal from our pit mouth straight into a power station, and we sell it for 25 cents a kilowatt hour. 3 times that cost. 3 times. No transport. Why? Because of subsidies. The Australian Energy Market Commission says that the cost of subsidies for solar and wind is $90 per year for a typical household. He's wrong. You can't argue with Moran's figures because Moran got them from the government, state and federal. They're $536 a year, directly just the subsidies themselves. 39% of a household power bill. Household policies cost us $13 to $15 billion a year. $1,300 per household. So someone on the median income is really getting it in the neck. We have loss of jobs for every green job, and this comes from reliable figures from countries that have been using green energy, so-called green energy, for a long time. For every green job, solar and wind, there are 2.2 jobs lost in the real economy. The cost of transmission not included in this. These wind turbines, solar panels are not recyclable because it takes too much damn energy to recycle them. They become hideous monstrosities that are destroying the environment. They take an enormous cost of resources. A ton of steel, the tonnage of steel required to produce a unit of electricity from coal-fired power station is about 35 tons. These figures are from Alex Epstein. The same unit of electricity from wind turbines, 546 tons. Solar panels and wind turbines can never compete. They will be subsidised forever. And the level of subsidies that you're seeing now is going to dramatically increase as our level of solar and wind increases. John Howard's government introduced the renewable energy target, which is destroying this country's electricity supply. He introduced the national electricity market, which is really a racket, a bureaucratic racket. He did that. He was the first major party leader to introduce an emissions trading scheme, a carbon dioxide tax as policy. Not the Labor Party, John Howard's government. Everywhere in the world, as subsidies for solar and wind, as the amount of solar and wind increases, the cost of electricity increases. Fact. From country to country to country. Australia has the highest per capita subsidies for solar and wind in the world. We haven't seen yet what the damage that's coming from that. We have yet to see that. It's coming. What's worse is that our level of subsidies is double the next highest in the world. Double. Every coal power station that closes in this country, you have a look at what happens straight afterwards. The prices increases. We are destroying our manufacturing sector because manufacturing sector's number one cost component is electricity. Not labour anymore, electricity. When you raise electricity prices artificially, you destroy that manufacturing and it goes to where? We send our coal to China. They send us back solar panels and wind turbines. And we subsidise them for doing it. We subsidise them for running it, whether they operate or not. And that's what drives our electricity costs up. This is being done by our politicians. They're investing in solar and wind, which are parasitic malinvestments. They destroy the host. They destroy the host. They're doing this in accordance with UN and World Economic Forum policies. They don't want alternative energy. They want less energy so they can control energy. They've said that. This has all been based on lies. And what they've done is they've used this as a way of stealing property rights. So now I want to come back to John Howard a third time. His government stole the rights of farmers to use their property. He stole them. And I'll tell you how this government did that. You might remember that the United Nations passed the Kyoto Protocol in 1997. John Howard said, we won't sign it, and everyone clapped, but we will comply with it. That meant shutting down power stations, shutting down transport, shutting down cars, shutting down industry. He knew that his government knew that that would not happen in this country. So what they did was they looked for an alternative. And they cooked up a scheme whereby they could take a farmer's land and say to that farmer, you are not going to clear that land. And the UN agreed to do that. If they could stop the clearing of land, then that would be trees saved for absorbing carbon dioxide, as good as having a credit for reducing carbon dioxide. See what they did? He had a problem. Under Section 51, Clause 31 of the Constitution, whenever a federal government interferes with the rights to use someone's property, their rights to use the property, they must pay just terms compensation. This would have been $100, $200 billion in compensation. And he wasn't going to cop it. So what he did, his government did, the so-called free market, the so-called constitutional government did, was to go around the federal constitution, go to the state premiers, did a deal with the state premiers so that they would bring in native vegetation protection legislation to stop the clearing of land. That's what the Liberal, National, Howard, Anderson government did. They stole farmers' rights to use their land, and I mean they stole it. They had not only that, the farmer then has a massive decrease in the value of his property or her property. So that's another theft. This is not just farmers. Brisbane City Council right now is taking a block of land off an 80-year-old man who wants to sit back and retire. He's developing, he's had several blocks of land, he's selling them all. They've taken one block and just stolen it and said we're making that a reserve. Now I've got no problem with anyone, as I said to Peter a little while ago, with the government coming in, state, federal, local, and saying I want some of your land for the benefit of the community. If you want it for the benefit of the community must pay for it. You do not steal land. It's fundamental. You do not steal any property. These things are happening in city residents. It's not just suburban residents, it's also city residents and it's farmers. Fundamentally, this is about control. It is an extremely serious issue. It is about destroying initiative and destroying responsibility. The voice the Aboriginal voice, the Albanese voice, is a way to get at that through a treaty. Make no mistake about that. The voice is hideous on itself, but it's a precursor to a treaty which, if you listen to what Albanese said as opposition leader, is a fundamental precursor to a treaty which is about taking your land. I'll echo something else that I've said many, many times. I'll echo Greenie saying this. The owner of the land, and quite often that's a farmer, is the best protector of the environment. The best protector of the environment. And it's really simple. It's really simple to understand. That farmer is relying upon that land value when they retire to be their superannuation or to hand it to their kids. If they destroy it, there's nothing there for them. They are the best protectors of the environment. And a farmer also knows that the environment is extremely important to the balance of the farm. We've had fishing rights stolen in this country. We've had food security now under threat. And listen to some of these insanities. They are stealing the property, and that's one insanity, but listen to some of these other insanities. Australia produces 500 million tonnes of coal. That sounds like a lot, but Raj, we're about number 5 or 6, aren't we? Behind America, Russia, India, Indonesia, that's right, and China. We produce 500 million tonnes of coal a year, and we export most of it. China produces 4.5 billion tonnes a year. 4.5. They manufacture stuff there, send it back here. This is insane. We are now dependent on the Chinese. The Chinese use our coal to make solar panels and wind turbines, using our subsidies that increases the cost of our electricity that drives manufacturing to China. You see the picture? On a Gladstone wharf, I overflew the port of Gladstone recently. I saw 38 coal ships out off the port, sometimes there are 50, waiting to be loaded. I watched as we flew over one coal boat at the wharf being loaded with Australian coal. And I watched on a neighbouring wharf hideous amounts of wind turbine blades coming in. We send them wonderful energy and they send us back crap. And that's because of the government. The environmental damage. If you uncover coal, you have to pay so many dollars per acre cleared, hectare cleared, as a bond to make sure you reclaim it. That's a serious amount of money, and that's fair enough. Wind turbines, solar panels, no bond. Who's going to pick up the liability when they leave? I'll tell you who it will be. It'll be the property owner or the state. No bond, no liability at the end. Wind turbines are damaging human health. They're damaging agricultural land. Solar panels are damaging agricultural land. They don't even have to worry about clearing trees. It's just clear the trees, whatever you want. Pump storage, I haven't got time to go into the details, but pump storage. Snowy 2, complete failure. They wouldn't let us see the business case details. They had no cost-benefit analysis. It is a pipe dream and it was done for political purposes only. It is a complete failure, and it is a remarkable symbol of the failure of the national electricity market. That's the only reason it can ever work, and I don't think it will work. Yungala and Barumba are from the state government, and they are taking away attention from serious failures of their own in the state hospital system. I visited Neera Creek some time ago. They're wanting to put in toxic solar panels there in a hailstone-affected area. Neera Creek goes straight into Wivenhoe Dam, which is a source of our water supply for Ipswich, Logan, Bow Desert, Gold Coast, Toowoomba in an emergency, Brisbane. 2.5 million people with toxins in their water if that solar panel goes ahead. We are now making our electricity supply dependent on weather, solar and wind, destroying lives, destroying livelihoods, and destroying security. Here's the key point. The government in this country is allowing this to happen. The key problem is poor governance under the Liberal Nationals and Labor Greens. They do not use data in making these decisions. That's why the CSIRO has got no evidence, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's just your money they're wasting. The problem, every single major problem in our country starts in Canberra. Every one of them. Where are the solutions? With the people. Who pays for the problems? The people. Who pays for them? We do. Every major climate and energy policy, this will surprise some people, every major climate and energy policy was introduced by the Liberal National Party. Every one of them. And the worst of all was the Howard Anderson Liberal National Party government. That started the damage, it laid the foundations, Rudd came along and turbocharged it. Then Morrison introduced more. The safeguard mechanism that Chris Bowen introduced with Albanese in last September was introduced by Turnbull and Hunt in 2015, and it quietly slipped through before I was in the Parliament without any of the media taking attention. And they said it was the basis for a carbon dioxide tax globally. Look at the COVID contradictions in the last 3 years. There's no trust. Liberal and Labor were working together on that. And that brings me to my next point. We have ceded our sovereignty in this country, or rather we haven't, but the politicians in Canberra and the Liberal National Party and the Labor Greens parties have ceded our sovereignty. They're putting in place United Nations World Economic Forum policies with no authority. Were you ever asked to vote for any of these policies in an election, these UN policies? No. The next point I want to make is that the UN and the World Economic Forum are anti-human. They are anti-human. That's why I talked about care as the first thing. Because what they're doing, and they ingrain it in kids from when they're little, they're saying humans are greedy, rapacious, uncaring, irresponsible, you just don't care. And nothing is further from the truth. We are the only species on this planet who, when we realise we're doing damage, we fix it. Every other species goes extinct because we've got a brain and we take enormous care in our environment. Ask any farmer, enormous care for the environment. And what these bastards do is they load you up with fear, isolate you, saying you're on your own. This is what they've done all through COVID. They're doing it with climate. You'll kill granny. You'll kill your next generation. They make us fearful, and they think that, and we start thinking that we're crazy because we don't do what they're saying. They use fear as a tool. Children are scared. They're afraid of living because there's so much guilt that they're going to end. You know, Al Gore has come out so many times and said the world will end in the next 10 years. He first said it 27 years ago. The anti-human scam is the biggest scam we have going. It's spread by the same people who spread the COVID exaggerations and mismanagement and deceit. The climate scam, the climate fraud, the money fraud. This is what their real problems are. And that's where their number one objective is to put in place communism. Not my words, their words. And the way they do that is you destroy family. Family Law Act came from the UN, 1975. You destroy religion so the people haven't got a faith to go to. You put in massive government. Everywhere in this state, in our country, government's got its fingers. It tells parents how to parent. It tells parents how to look after their children. And number one for a communist, stealing someone's property rights. And I want to commend Jewel and Jim and Chris for standing up. So here's what I'd like you to do, please. Help us to help you. Spread the word. Share it. Jewel had the same points. Share these things. Many of you already know what I'm talking about. Share it. Be citizens. Hold your members of parliament accountable. Who pays my salary? Louder? We do. That's right. And you pay your own member's salary. You pay the member for Oxley's salary. Speaker of the House. You pay every senator's salary. You pay the state MP's salary. You pay the councillors their salary. Make them earn it. They're supposed to use this and this to work for you. We don't need a voice. We need politicians with ears, not a voice. But we have to hold them accountable for their decisions. Tell them what you want. If you've seen some of my videos and you like them, please share them with someone who doesn't know of Malcolm Roberts. Volunteer at elections. Take part as candidates. Volunteer in elections. Hand out how to vote cards. Be scrutineers. Door knocking. And above all, vote. Every time someone doesn't vote, you're giving the continuation of the Liberal-Labor duopoly. And if you're a One Nation voter, take another person who doesn't normally vote and get them to vote. Join One Nation. Our headquarters, because we've now got members of parliament in 5 of the 7 parliaments in this country. So we are growing. Our headquarters are now open continually. We need funds to keep that open. So please donate. We have got the CSIRO cold. There is no evidence for any of these climate policies, any of this reason for stealing our property rights. It's a matter of time before we crack them. But the thing is, working in Canberra is like being in syrup, like walking in syrup. It is just so slippery and so stultifying. It's the politics that drives what happens in Canberra, not the data. The intent of federal politicians and state politicians quite often is not to serve, it's to look after their vested interests, look after their mates, look after their donors. In the old days, if I'd had a gun and held it up to Chris Green's head, you would know that this little fellow is controlling this guy, right? These days, they don't do it with a gun. They do it through indoctrination and media. And the people are asleep, so please help us to wake them up. Please remember that as much as they tried to make you feel isolated, vulnerable and alone and terrified in COVID, you are not alone. Look at this room. It's wonderful. As people awaken, we're growing. So I want to leave you with these last few thoughts. You're going in the right direction. Together, we are going in the right direction. People are waking up. Help us to help you. And above all, be very, very pro-human. We are wonderful creatures, wonderful species. We don't always behave ourselves, but we are wonderful. Keep that in the back of your mind and in your heart all the time. Thank you so much.